Om Shruti Smriti Purananam Alayam Karunalayam Namami Bhagavatpadam Shankaram Lokashankaram Shankaram Shankaracharyam Keshavam Badarayanam Sutra Bhashya Kritau Vande Bhagavantau Punah Punaha Ishvaro Gururatmeti Murti Bheda Vibhagine Vyomavatyapta Dehaya Dakshina Namaha Gukarastva Andhakaro Vai Rukarastva Nivartakaha Andhakara Nirodhitvat Gururitya Vidhiyate Sadashiva Samarambham Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmadacharya Paryantam Vande Guru Paramparam. Om Sahana Vavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvisha Vahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. So let us chant the first three verses of the Kena Upanishad. Kene shitam patati preshitam manaha Kena pranah prathamah praiti yuktaha Kene shitam vachamimam vadanti Chakshuh shrotram kau devo yunakti Shrotrasya shrotram manaso mano yat Vacho havacham sau pranasya pranaha Chakshushascha chakshuhu atimuccha dhiraha Pretyamasmat lokatamrita bhavanti Na tatra chakshurgacchati na vaggacchati no manaha Na vidmaha na vijanimaha yathaitadanushishyaat. Let's do number 4 also. I think that we might be able to cover that. I don't know. Anyadev tad viditat atho aviditat adhi iti shushruma purvesham ye nastatyat chakshire. So we ended up the last class with a question from the student that the first verse was, of course, in the form of the question from the students and the student from the standpoint of one student. And it says, Kene shitam patati manah peshitam manaha. So, instigated and willed by whom does the mind fall on objects? It is as though it is forced. This is what Swami Paramarthananda's commentary, kind of like a commentary. Directed by whom does the main prana function? Willed by whom do the people speak these words? Which effulgent principle indeed directs the eyes and the ears? Kau devo yunakti. So this was the question. So, in answer to that question, the second verse was presented by the Shastra, which said, Shrotrasya shrotram, manaso mano yat, vacho ha vacham sau pranasya pranaha, chakshushascha chakshu atimuchya dhiraha pretya asmat loka amrita bhavanti. So the English translation of that is that is indeed which is the ear of the ear, the mind of the mind, the speech of the speech, the prana of the prana, and the eye of the eye, the discriminative one who know the self, give up this body identification and become immortal after leaving this world. This was the answer. So there was a question to that, which is what we were reviewing last class, and we will continue, we'll pick it up from there. Which said that, listen, this answer I don't understand, because there is some, as though my mind is going in a certain direction, and sometimes the mind goes in directions that are are troublesome to us. We don't want the mind to go in a certain direction, to think about certain things in a bad way. We don't want the mind to do it, but it does. It does. As though it is impelled, as though it is forced by someone. Who is that person who is impelling the mind, and therefore also not only the mind, which is the most subtle of the indriyas, but all the other indriyas. I sometimes, this is what happens sometimes. If you hear a whisper, then you pause and you turn your ear, one of the ears, so that it's very directly to it, to see what the whisper is all about. So Swami Dayanand used to say that we cannot stand uncertainty. We don't stand ajnanam. We don't like ignorance. If there is something going on that I want to know what it is. And so, really speaking, if there are a couple of people whispering, it has nothing to do with you. Maybe in the office, even in the office, the chances of somebody whispering about you is infinitesimal small. But you just want to know what the gossip is. And so Swamiji used to say, if you want somebody to really pay attention to you, then start talking in whispers. Oh, I have to tell you this. And then if somebody else hears, I have to tell you this, then he says, what is it that... So the ear also is impelled by someone to force to listen to something, even though you may not want to do it. This is the idea. So in the answer to this first question, the answer was the year of the year. So the person says, this is not an answer. I want to know which person it is. So this is the Shanka. This is the Purva Paksha. Not really a Purva Paksha. Purva Paksha means one who is diametrically opposed to what Shastra is saying. That is what Purva Paksha is. So like sometimes you have, we're doing it in the Brahma Sutra. So the Sankhya people say, no, this is not the way it should be. We don't understand this. So we were talking about pramana what was it? The lakshana and pramana. Yeah, lakshana and pramana. And so some people say the lakshana and pramana all should be in the same. This is called Purva Paksha. Here this is not a Purva Paksha, this is just a Shanka, some doubt. Somebody is not clear. You're listening to this answer by the teacher and you say, may I ask you, this doesn't seem like an answer to me. So the teacher says, why not? So he says, I was expecting to have a fully functional person who is impelling the mind. And who is that person? This is what I was expecting. This is what I was hoping that you would tell. And you are saying, eye of the eye, mind of the mind, ear of the ear. How? So Shruti says, I said that because that is the only way for us to accurately depict the nature of the self. Because the nature of the self is that it is not a person who is doing vyapara, who is not doing transactions, is not capable of doing transactions. It has the power from which all transactions can happen, like electricity. So the electricity is not it's not another appliance. Like one appliance can light up something else. So there you can say, just like I think the best example is just like fire can heat up a pan, and the pan in turn can heat up the water in the pan. And the water in the pan can in turn heat up a bottle floating in the water, a bottle floating in the water. And the milk for the baby in the bottle is heated up by the water in the pan. Like that, there are successive impellers you weigh. But here, the, the fire by itself is the nature of giving power. So a better example than that is, of course, the electricity it is in the nature. Also, a very important example given in is that the mere presence of the Atma, the nearness of the Atma. So this is what we were talking about, praptasya prapti. That how do you understand the nearness of the Atma? What do you mean by the nearness of the Atma? It is very close to it. And so this is what we are going to develop over the course of this entire Kena Upanishad. So there the example given is like a very strong magnet. So in a very strong magnet, if you bring a metallic object close to the magnet, then it goes forcefully and clings to the magnet, as I'm sure our experiences are. And so you can ask magnet, you almost broke my device. This is not real, because as soon as we got close to you, you forced it to cling to you. And the magnet could say, I don't remember doing that. In fact, I don't do it. I am just magnetic. This is my nature. So there is no doership in the magnets. There is no kartritvam. And there is no bhoktritvam. There is no desire to get some results. In fact, if you look at the forces of nature as designed by Ishvara, there was this, I don't know how many have seen this iconic movie called Space Odyssey 2001, which was there. I don't remember when we saw that. It was one of the most impressive movies. And it talked about how the spaceships are doing a dance around with each other, or with the earth or something like that. And there is a music. It was composed by it is accompanied by a composed music called also Sprach Zarathustra, if I can remember those names. And it was a beautiful set of music, and I remember getting a big disc and of this, and then all the music for it. Sometimes it now even comes. Anyway, so it was showing the dance of the celestial objects. Do you know this is exactly what Ishvara's creation is? There is a dance of the celestial objects. And so, as was pointed out by Einstein, about how the curvature of the space allows the natural things, or allows the heavenly bodies to naturally go around each other and escape gravitation once in a while. And then we captured on it, and we delicately poised. So the earth and the other planets do not fall into the sun. The moon doesn't fall into the earth, But there is a very good balance between centrifugal and centripetal forces, and yet so they are dancing. So that is all due to the magnetic forces of these. So there is no kartritvam. There is no ahankara by the Prithvi, which says, I am so happy that the moon is going around me. It's so attracted to me, and I'm going around the sun. And so there is no kartritvam and bhoktritvam in the magnet. And the self is exactly like that. Self, the Sakshi, the Jivatma, Paramatma is exactly like this. And it is like a very powerful magnet. Very powerful. And very capable. I mean, just the example of the dream, for example, is an amazing one. How the consciousness divides itself into people in the dream, objects in the dream, emotions in the dream, the good and the bad of the dream, the very ingredients of a drama in the dream. All that is possible, realistically. When you're dreaming, you don't think, oh, this is just a dream. I think it's going to be over soon. No. As we saw in the Mandukya Karika, it appears very real. And so the same thing here in our Jagrat Avastha, very real. But there is no doership and enjoyership that I must do this, sankalpa, and I must do this, and I am very sorry to really have done this because I didn't realize. All these kinds of thoughts are all in the mind, not in the Atma. Kartritvam, bhoktritvam is the ahankara. This is what we have to see. This is what we have to really do the viveka on. So in any way, to conclude that aspect of looking at it, the Atma is not an impeller, like the questionnaire was expecting. Impelled by whom does the mind fall on objects? Impelled by whom does the eyes decide to see something? And so all of the apparent impelling is all in the instruments, all in the appliances. The very mere presence of the electricity can make it work like that. So the Shruti says, this is not it is my answer of saying Shrotrasya Shrotram is not something that I am incapable of explaining. This is the way it has to be explained. Because the Atma, unlike the instruments, is not Vyapari. Vyapari means one who is doing transactions, selling, buying, like going to a farmer's market. So you're a Vyapari. You're selecting things. You're moving from shop to shop. It is not like that. It is a constant power that allows everything to go on. So this answer is appropriate, my dear, the Shutri says. So then there is another question. So what I'm going to do in following this, I think I told you this, and in some cases in this Vedantic Insights course, I have a certain flexibility. I've given that to myself. A certain flexibility to change the course of the teaching. And so um, has really given me a certain freedom. And so, for example, if I taught Purusha Suktam, then I had made a promise that I'm going to follow a certain text and I'm going to take a certain number of verses. I'm probably going to try to finish it by about 35, 40. Usually I don't, but whatever the sankalpa was. Here, you know very well this is an open ended class and I can change things and it's not as though I'm doing it arbitrarily, but certain thoughts come in my mind that I think this will be a better way to do it. So, for instance, I just started the Vedantic insight Praptasya Prapti with the example of the credit card. So then I decided that I think I'm going to spend some time. And then I was just thinking, what should I do? And I was just reading Kena Upanishad, and I says, this would be a good example. So now I'm doing that. Now, the latest thing that I'm thinking of is that instead of covering Kena Upanishad in just a few classes, why don't I do the Shankara Bhashya in a conceptual way? That was a flexibility. That was the idea that Bhagavan gave to me, really. I mean, I really abdicated my thinking to Ishvara. If certain thoughts come, he knows that they don't have an agenda. I don't have an agenda. And so when the thoughts come, it is really meant for our common good. And so this thought came to me that I think I should just follow the Shankara Bhashya. So what that means is that this section on Kena Upanishad is going to be a little longer because I would like to now capture the very beautiful and very important and very significant points brought in by Adi Shankara. So this is what I'm doing now. So I've expanded Kena Upanishad, and I'm hoping you are okay with it. It was interesting. I was just thinking about the Kena Upanishad example. So let me pause and just tell you about what that means. Many of you may have actually gone through this text before, and you may be thinking, well, I don't know if I want to do this again. Vedantic Insights was supposed to be a general one, and this is not a class on a specific text, as I mentioned to you ahead of time. So you may have certain doubts. So let me just tell you my experience. My experience has been that if you revisit the same text after a while, and if you have been studying with some dedication, you will find that the same text that you had studied before gives you much more information this time. There was a kind of like an analogy that I had thought about. I don't know if any of the acharyas gave me this analogy, or maybe in one of the rare cases, this is my own. In any case, doesn't matter. So I want you to picture a mountain in the shape of a cone. And it's a steep mountain that you are trying to get to the top of. Okay, this is the picture. So imagine the path that you are taking around the mountain at a gentle slope and slowly coming up around it at a higher and higher level. Just picture that. You can even picture kind of like a cone with some string that you are putting around, and every time you are making a circle, it is at a higher level, like this. So picture that. So now, this is exactly what my experience has been. And I've been following this for about 20 years. And what that means is that every 7 to 8 years, I have a chance, the Ishvara has given me enough years to live to be able to do this. I have had several different repetitions of the same text, but at a higher level. I'm telling you, this is not just an sort of like an idle thing that I'm going to tell you. I'll give you one example. So I have a habit that when I see a text, this is a habit that I have been following for the last 40 years. I underline the text with a pencil, not with a pen. I don't want to do that with a pen where it is indelible and it spoils it. And I'm not really sharing these with anybody. These are just my own books. And so I have respect for the book, but if I see something that strikes me, I underline it. And the very act of underlining means I pause. It reinforces the thought in my mind. So this is a habit that I've had for a long time. And this I have now observed to be a sign of my own internal progress. And what do I mean by that? Recently, for example, I started reviewing Rudram. I think I've mentioned it to you. This is what I'm doing these days. I'm doing it in great detail, pausing, understanding, and I'm taking inputs from both Swami Dayananji's book and Swami Maheshananji's book. And I'm following that. And what I find is that sentences that I had not underlined before, I am underlining now. Before it was like 20% of the lines, now it is more like 40% of the lines. So it's the same sentence that I had seen before, but those ideas now strike me. So when you're going around, and the next time you go around to the same direction, it is going through the same text as though. But now you're reaching the same direction, let's say north, is at a higher level. Why? Because you have done a good job of studying all of the ancillary things that allow the subtlety of the thoughts to become better. So anyway, the reason I'm spending some time on that is that even if you have studied Kena Upanishad better, I hope that you don't look upon this as a repetition, but because I have also studied Kena Upanishad, I don't know, maybe about half a dozen times at the minimum, probably more. And I still have such joy in going through. Why? Because the same sentences, the same mantras, the same flow of ideas, the same Adi Shankara Bhashya speaks more clearly to me than before. Very joyful. Anyway, I just thought I'd mention that to you. Okay, so now having answered this one question by a person, and I'm really going to just follow. I have it now, page by page and so on. I'm just following this Gita Press book, which is mostly what I do, because I have a collection of all of these Hindi translations by Gita Press, Shankara Bhashya, and the Upanishad themselves. So I have a whole collection of these that I've collected over the years. So this is what I'm following. So here, this is followed by another question. Kim punaha atra padartha shrotrasya shrotramityaadehe nahi atra shrotrasya shrotraantarena arthaha yatha prakashasya prakashantarena. I'm not going to read this. I'm just doing it just for the fun of it. Anyway, I'll just follow the translations and give you the English translations of that, not the Hindi. So the second question is, he says, wait, I understand what you're saying, that that Atma is not a vyapari. It is not a transactional person. It is just sitting there. That much, okay. I get what you're saying. Your example of the light, of the electricity here. This electricity is not mentioned, but the example of the magnet can be done. Yes, the magnet does not have any kartritvam. There is no vyapari. It's not transacting. It is just by the sheer power making the vyapari work. I get that. But tell me, the mind appears to be conscious. So it's like there is a bulb which is lighted. And a lighted bulb does not need another light to light it up. Right? So there's one candle which is lighting up the room. You don't need another candle to light up this candle, isn't it? That's very clear. Yes. So why are you saying that you need an external light, external power for the mind and the eyes and ears to work? Because they are capable of doing it. They seem to be very conscious. Your hands are moving. Your head is moving. Your eyes are opening, closing. All these things are going on. So it has some power of its own. Then this gives a chance for. So these questions are there so that step by step we can actually clear our own doubts. So the answer to that is this is different because the apparent power of the mind and the eyes and the ears is because it is a dependent power given by the self. Just like the appliance needs the power of the electricity. It doesn't have its own power. This is a very fundamental part of the very explanation of the whole creation, that all the things that are going on is really a reflection. It is just like you have water which is in a pan. The water is not hot by itself like the fire is, but it has dependent heat. Yes, the water can be very hot. It can just cause second degree, third degree burn, just like the fire does. But if the fire is not heating it, by itself it cools down. And so the same thing is there in our mind and eyes and ears and so on. It does not have its own ability. It is borrowed from the self. This is the situation. So he says, I'm glad you asked me that I'm very happy to clarify that for you. So that was the next point. Then I mentioned something to you at the very last class, which I didn't finish and I was not able to find it, but now I looked it up. And so now it finishes, I believe. I think it's at the end of the commentary. Yeah, there is a couple more. Anyway, so here Adi Shankara says that the last line of the second verse, sorry, not the first, but the second verse, the last, not the last quarter, but the last part of the mantra, Atimuccha dhiraha pretya asmat lokat amrita bhavanti. So this section was not asked by the student, right? Not asked by the student, because the students had said, Kene shritam patati peshritam manaha, Kena pranaha pratama praiti yuktaha, Kene shritam vachamimam vadanti chakshu shotram kau devo yunakti. That's all. So you should have just simply said, Shotrasya shotram manaso manaha ya vachoha vacham pranasya pranaha chakshushasya chakshuhu. Period. And even though you had an idea on how to present this, and I get it, but then that's it. Why did you add Atimuchyadhiraha pretya asmat lokat bhavanti? So here, Adi Shankara says that the Shruti understands that the question of the student is meaningful. Meaningful means that it is not just a tactical question, it's a strategic question. Tactical question would be yes, just give me the answer and then that's it, I'm just asking you something. Question is, what is the reason for this? How is it, what's the advantage of knowing this? So even though it is not specifically asked by the student, the Shastra proceeds to now give the significance of this. And so that's the reason for adding Atimuchyadhiraha pretya asmatlokat amrita bhavanti. And so that means that the real significance of asking questions in life should be, how do I become free from problems in this life? Otherwise, you can just say, just some small questions, small answers, and so on. And that may be, but my real questions are, how do I become happy? And so the Shastra understands it and adds to it, he says, anyway, the Sanskrit is rather long, so I won't go through that. So he adds the fact I can add this Sanskrit and I can add. He says, Prashtuhu of the questionnaire, Prishtasya arthasya gyatum ishtatvat. He says that they really want to know the significance of this question. Shrotradehe shrotradi lakshanam yathoktam brahma gyatva iti adhyahriyate amrita bhavanti iti phalashutescha. So he says, Brahma gyatva iti adhyahriyate. That means, in the answer, really this is all Brahma Vidya. Brahma Vidya means Ishvara Vidya. Ishvara Vidya means I want to know the entire structure of the whole world. What is it that will make me free? This is what Brahma Vidya is. So he says that is kept in mind, knowing which is the answer. So gyatva means knowing which. Yatha ukta brahma gyatva iti adhyahriyate. Adhyahara means it's added. It's that section is added to the question so that it's now complete. And that's how the Shruti is going to proceed further. So you might as well say it in the very beginning. Gyatva iti adhyahriyate. Beautiful. That's what I wanted to say last time and I couldn't find it. So now, this concept, this thought, this 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 section of the teaching, knowing which one leaves this world and becomes free. And so here, Swami Paramathananda's translation, I would disagree with a little bit. So he says, the discriminative one who know the self give up the body identification and become immortal after leaving this world. I don't think that is the real meaning here. It means just leaving the world. How do you leave the world? Is through identification. So, this might have been given by him. It's not as though he doesn't know. I'm not implying that. Swami Paramathananda is much wiser than I am. It's just that when he wrote this book and how it was composed quickly and so on, the Jivan Mukti was not kept in mind. And so in the translation of Adi Shankara, it doesn't say that at the fall of, maybe it does, I don't know. I have to look at it. No, he doesn't say that. Yeah, no, in fact, it doesn't say that at all. It says, I'll read it to you. Ye shotradi atma bhavam parityajyanti te dhiraha dhimantaha nahi vishishta dhimatvamantarena shrotradi atma bhavaha shakyam parityaktum upetya vyavritya asmat lokat, which in asmat lokat here, it doesn't mean the fall of the body here. Putra mitra kalasha bandhushu mama aham bhava samvyavhara lakshanat taktam esh sarvaishana bhuti ityevarthaha amrita amarana dharmo bhavanti. Clean. So this translation is not correct. That after leaving this world, just leaving the identification of with the body-mind complex, you become free. And that can only happen when you're alive. It cannot happen when you're asleep. It cannot happen when you are dead. So this thought is the central one and is now carried through for the rest of the whole text. And so the kernel of this thought has already been put in by the Shastra. Atimuchya dhiraha, right? Atimuchya dhiraha pretya asmat lokat amrita bhavanti. This is the kernel, the seed, which is now going to be expanded on. So what does it really mean? So here it says that only when you have Atma Bhava is self-identification. Atma Bhava means self-identification with the upadhis. Upadhis means janmata, being born, bornness. Maranata, that I'm subject to dying. Samsara, that I'm being continuously kicked around. All this Atmata, Atma Bhava, is responsible for your identification with the Upadhi. Not that is what is causing it. And if you don't have that Atma Bhava in your mind, body, etc., you are free. That's exactly free. So it's interesting. Just to give you Anyway, before I give you a kind of a personal testimony to this in a minute, I'll do that. So, um, what the Shankara Bhashya does, as you know very well, it does not pretend to just teach you on its own. It tells you what the Shruti and the Smriti says about this concept. And so this will be actually expanded very much in the last part of verse number 3 and continued on with verse number 4. Iti shushruma purvesham ye naha tat vyata chakshire. And then in number 4, oops, good heavens, it is so long. I have no idea. Yad vacha anubhyatitam. No, not 4, 5. No, in number 3 itself, I didn't read it properly. Tatha etadanushishyaat anyadev tadvidita tatho anyadvidita. I'll go into all this. Anyway, so as I was mentioning that in all of the bhashyas, he doesn't say I say this. He says, he points it out to the Shastra. And I should just make this point really since I'm doing this. I remember making this point was made by Swami Dayanandji again and again. That really all I'm doing is to give you the direction that please see what the Shruti is saying. Don't see what I'm saying. Similarly, in my classes also, I give examples. Swami Maheshananji said this. Swami Dayanandji said this. Very rarely I might say, I gave this example of this cone and so on and so forth. Maybe that was given by one of the acharyas also. But possibly that's a very minor kind of a thing that I might have thought of it. But most of the time we are really giving for a reason. So much so that I remember when we were at the ashram and there was an apparent split between Chinmaya Mission and Swami Dayanandji. And he had decided that he might as well go on his own because life as interpreted by the students of Chinmaya Mission was getting troublesome for him. Not Swami Chinmayanand himself, but the students of Swami Chinmayanandji who were making life tough for him. Why didn't you do this? You are supposed to be second in command. Why are you doing it on your own? Those kinds of political things. He says, you know what? I think I'm just going to be on my own. And I was really very privy at that time. All this was going on because I used to live close to Swamiji in the Piercy ashram. And so he confided in a few of us, I was not the only one, that he's not going to name his new the new name is not Swami Dayanand Mission, unlike Swami Chinmaya Mission. He says, this is not Swami Dayanand Mission. My mission is to point out towards the knowledge of the rishis. So he decided to call it Arshavidya Peetham. And so he was true to what he said, that I just don't want this to be a testimony to me. I want this all to go to the Shruti. So therefore, even in Shankara Bhashya, the Shruti is quoted again and again. So here it says that the self-identification with the body-mind complex is the ticket to death. This is In fact, Swami Tattvavidananda ji was, remember, he was very fond of saying this. And he's also, he was simply pointing out what the Shastra is saying. It's not as though it was his idea per se. He said, and the Shastra says this, that really speaking, we think we are alive for however many years and then we will die. This is what our thinking is, isn't it? I don't know how I'm going to be, how long I'll be alive, and then when my life is finished, then I will die. Shastra says, can I tell you something? You are not going to die once. You are dying second by second, minute by minute every day. What? I am not dying. I'm sitting here because you are killing yourself by Atma Bhava with the body-mind complex. You're killing yourself. You are ignoring that you are deathless. You are, and this is a very big thing that we're going to be studying, that I have to keep in mind continuously. And I should have a smile on my lips. What a funny way I'm leading my life. I am basically deathless, but I keep bothering about things that don't really affect me. I'm killing myself. Atmahatya. This is the Atmahatya. This is suicide. Continuous suicide. And so, really speaking, what it says is this. So in this one, Atimuchya dhiraha pretya asmat lokat amrita bhavanti. So lokaha, asmat loka, the word loka here is not the physical world, not this lifespan that I think of it as being this life and then the next life. It is not that. Then what? Lokyate anubhuyate iti loka. Very famous, very not famous, but very often quoted by Swami Dayanand ji. Loka means lokyate, all experiences. Anything with the anatma is loka. And when I leave that, not physically leave that, but the atma bhavam leave that. If I understand that I am unnecessarily having self-identification with things that is not the self, then I'm free. Atimucya dhiraha asmat lokat pretya amrita bhavanti. So this thought is now given all over. So Adi Shankara quotes this. Na karmana na prajaya dhane na tyage naike amritatva manashu parena nakam vihitam guhayam vibhrajate yatyatayo vishanti vedant. We know all of that we do. When a sannyasi comes to our home, we do this. Na karmana na prajaya na dhanena tyagena eke amritatva manushu. So the amritatva means my sense, my immortality. The immortality that is me, not mine. Actually, it is me. My nature is immortality. This cannot be gotten without tyaga. Tyaga of what? My self-identification with the body-mind complex. No amount of karma, no amount of progeny, not amount of dhanam, money, any of the power and so on. It's not going to give me amritatvam, which is what I really want. Na karmana na prajaya dhanena tyage naike tyagena eke. Only by tyaga, as is what saying, asmat lokat pretya amrita bhavanti. Then in the Kathopanishad, paranchikhani vyatranat swayambhu tasmat parang pashyati na antaratman kaschid dhiraha pratyakatmanam aikshat atmavritti chakshuhu amritatvam icchan. Then Kathopanishad again, yada sarve pramucyanti kamaha ye asya hridi shritaha atra brahma ashnute ityadi shrutibhyaha. And then I think that there is also given in just those two are given. So here I can go back to my personal example that just happened just a few days ago. So I have a friend for a long time, and I won't really just give him a name, you should just see the general. But I was very happy to introduce this person to Swami Chinmayananji, long time ago, in 1973. And he was one of the very prominent people who followed Swami Chinmayanand and became one of the office bearers in their board and so on. Whereas I took on a different path, I followed Swami Dayanandji, and so we were not together most of the time, but it was the same. There's no big difference. It's just two gurus that are saying slightly differently, that's it. Anyway, just in the last, and so he and his wife are great devotees of Swami Chitmanand and great devotees of all the other Swamis who have been in the Chinmaya mission, Swami Tejomayananda and so on. So for the last 1 year, this gentleman has developed a cancer of the blood and has become increasingly ill. Just about 3 months ago, he developed a different cancer of the brain. And this is the one that has been really very, very devastating for him, for his wife and so on. And so we go, and my wife and I go and meet them from time to time, console them and so on, find out where he's going through chemotherapy, or he's had 4 chemotherapies, very, very painful. So last weekend we went there, and his wife, who's pretty emotional anyway, she is really taking it very hard, really broke down. And was saying that she was turning to me and said, I don't understand this at all, because we have been following Vedanta for so long, and we had our faith in Ishvara, and we thought we were doing well, and now this tragedy has happened, and which has really devastated. And I am really completely bewildered how it happened and why it happened. And so she was kind of looking at me and saying, what do you say to this? So I told her, I said, listen, this is exactly what Vedanta is saying. In the way that if you have Atma Bhavam in Anatma, so this is exactly what is happening, because she's saying that our family is devastated. He's not that old. He still has several years to live, and if he dies prematurely. and our entire family is affected and my life is affected. What am I going to do? And so, is this the reward of learning Vedanta? And then, of course, I was, not that harsh as I am just trying to you, but my thought process was, what else did you expect? This is anatma. Family relationships and longevity and health is all anatma. And so, if you are putting your self identification to this anatma, isn't it natural that one day it's going to leave you? I was not really pontificating. I said this in a right manner, but very firmly. I said, my friend, this is exactly what it's be. And so what needs to happen, which I should have said, you should have happened, hasn't happened, is for you not to really, for you to have discovered a love for the Atma which is undying. And if you really have studied Vedanta for all these years, as you are supposed to, you will not be in this situation. I didn't say all of that in that manner, but I really just said, this is exactly how the script is going. This is what the Kena Upanishad is saying. That pretya asmat lokat amrita bhavanti, because as long as your Atma Bhava, your self-identification is with chakshuhu and manaha and so on and so forth. What time is it? I'm losing track. It's 9 o'clock. You're not going to have amritatva. Not possible. And then it says, and so the word dhira is used, which I have explained many, many times. You're probably very familiar with my explanation. So dhiraha means a certain sense of wisdom, because our dukkha, our sense of sorrow, is all because we are not thinking. So here, in the one of the verses of Rudram, it is pointed out that Ishvara has 5 basic ways of composing this, not ways, but 5 different elements of composing this world. And so one is Utpatti, which is Janma, which is the birth of things. The other one is Sthiti. So Sthiti means that the Ishvara is both the Nimitta and Upadana Karanam, as we saw in the Brahma Sutra. So you see, this is the interesting thing, it's an important thing to see, that Ishvara is not like a pot maker who is just a creator but does not maintain the pot. So he is just a Nimitta Karanam. But Ishvara is both the Nimitta as well as Upadana Karanam. Means that even when things are, it is supported by Ishvara. It's not like, this is why we should say, where is Ishvara? You have abandoned me. He cannot abandon you because he's you. How can he abandon you? He's just like a sort of like a clay pot saying, clay, you have abandoned me. cannot abandon you. You are dependent on the clay. So sthiti means, Swami Dayanand used to say, sometimes human beings give birth to babies, but they're very poor in maintaining them. Or they are too busy. So the mother gives birth to a baby, and then she's got a job to do. And so she leaves them with a babysitter. And the babysitter can be good, babysitter can be bad, and you have abandoned your baby to the babysitter. Nanny, all day nanny. Ishvara is not like that. So both Utpatti and Sthiti and Samhara. Samhara is very important too, which means that when you go back, Ishvara doesn't leave you. In fact, you go back to Ishvara. And he has got to mold you one more time, some other shape. So these are the three things that elements of this Jagat. The fourth thing is bandhanam, a sense of bondage is also due to Ishvara. So we'll go into this in more detail some other time. And the fifth one is moksha. Utpatti, sthiti, laya or samhara, bandhana and moksha are all given by Ishvara. That's the funny play. The bandhana and moksha are both the result of the utpatti. So there it says that if you completely insist on just following the upadhis, there is bandhanam. Supposing you are a room space and all you want to look at is somebody else is saying, hey, there is a new house being built and they have now 16-foot ceilings. How big is your ceiling? My ceiling is only 8 foot. I'm very sorry. Is there a way to expand it? No, I don't think so. Well, I'm very sorry because my ceiling heights this is the modern home. These huge ceilings. So you have a feeling that, oh my gosh, I'm just a small room space. I want to be bigger. As long as you have that, there is no moksha for you. This is only bandhanam. And so when you have the self-identification with the whole space, then there is moksha. This is the play of the Ishvara. So 5 elements, not just 3 elements. So that is what is talked about here. So let's go to, we only have a few minutes, but we might as well go to verse number 2. Na tatra chakshuh gacchati, na vag gacchati, no manaha, na vidmaha, na vijanimaha, yatha etad anushishyat anyadev tadviditad atho aviditad adhi iti shushruma purvesham ye naha tadvyacha chakshire. Let's look at the English translation of that. And so here, this is given as verses number 3 and 4. So this is divided up into 2 verses. Here it is only given as 3, but in this chapter, in this book, Swami Paramarthananda is divided that into 2 verses. So this is on page 13. Na tatra chakshuh gacchati. The eye does not objectify that Brahman. Because Brahman was indicated, the word was not used, but What was indicated in the one is when you say that it becomes Amrita Bhavanti, that means Brahma Bhavanti. There's only one thing which is Amrita, which is Brahman. So Brahman was implied. So now that is brought in more definitely. I think in the entire, I'm not sure whether the word Brahma is used in the entire Kena Upanishad or not. Maybe not, but it's the same thing that is implied. The eye does not objectify that Brahman. The organ of speech does not objectify that Brahman. The mind also does not objectify that Brahman. We do not know that Brahman. We do not know how anybody would reveal this Brahman. We have heard the following teaching of the ancient teachers who revealed that Brahman to us. That Brahman is indeed different from the known and is different from the unknown. Anyway, let's divide that up into the two sections. Na tatra chakshu gacchati, na vag gacchati, no manaha. So, any of my traditional ways of knowing things does not work on the Atma, Brahman. Doesn't work. We'll go into this. Na vidmaha, na vijami maha. We do not know that Brahma. Na vidmaha. We don't know that Brahman. So all these are important words. Just follow the very words themselves. We do not know that Brahma. And we do not know how anyone would reveal this Brahma. It's a very strange situation. You have led us into a dead end. You are spending a lot of time in saying knowing which Amritatvam Bhavanti and so on. Okay, fine, where is it? No, you cannot really objectify it. Okay, you cannot objectify, so then what? And we don't know how to know this. And we don't know how anybody would be able to know this. Thank you very much. I have wasted a lot of time following you. And at the end you says you don't know. Isn't that what you're saying? So the verse number 3 just pauses at this point and says, yeah, that's true. Oh my God. Now what do we do? Then the verse 4 or the second half of the verse 3, he says, if you think that, then there is a way to look at it. It is a way to understand the Atma. Anyadev tad viditat atho aviditat athi. He says it is something which is different from what is known and different from the ignorance of knowing it. Aviditat adhi. Adhi here means anyat. Adhi actually means up. It is up from not knowing, means it is different from not knowing. This is an important thing in the explanation of this phenomena. It is different from known, but it is not unknown. So this is what the teaching is going to focus in on, this concept. The Atma is not knowable, neither is it unknowable. This is a very strange thing. How is that possible? You've created a third category. Normally there should be only either something is known or it is unknown. But a third category means neither it is known, neither it is unknown, it is something else. Really? How? This is what we're going to see. So, I will pause here and launch into an explanation of the third and the fourth verses in more detail next time. So, he says, basically, I can just spend a couple of minutes more. We can just say, na chakshu gacchati, na vak gacchati, no manaha. So that part is very simple because it's very obvious that the appliance cannot know the electricity. The flashlight cannot objectify the batteries of the flashlight. Very clear. One is a karya and one is a karana. The karya at best can objectify another karya, but not its own karana. And also, the manaha, etc., can only objectify things that are the purview of the gocharam. The word gocharam is used, means it is the gocharam is a very interesting word. Gocharam means where the cow can wander. Go here means the cow. Charanti, acharanti, the one which moves around. It's called gochara. Means that my sense organs are able to move around and objectify certain things. Yes, I'm able to see things, I'm able to hear things, and make some decisions about it and all that. Okay? But it does not the cow, but here the karya cannot do the karanam. So is the karanam lost? How can we do it then? So he says, it can be done through words, shabda jnanam. Just like the 10th man, you cannot show the 10th man, but you can say you. The words you, and say you forgot yourself. You yourself forgot yourself. Does the whole trick. So he says, Shabda Jnanam, Dashamo Asi. So this is what we are going to follow in more detail in the second verse onwards. Okay? So with that, let me close the class with a prayer. Om Asato Ma Sadgamaya Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya Mrityorma Amritam Gamaya Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Shri Guru Pyo Namaha Harihi Om. Balamani, can we say Atma does not have a beginning or end similar to Ishvara? So, and is there a simple description for Atma? So, the Atma and Ishvara are one and the same. It's not similar to Ishvara, it is Ishvara. So, Brahman, the very content of Ishvara is Brahman, and the incidental quality of Brahman, which is Ishvara. Similarly, the Atma is the intrinsic quality, intrinsic nature of the same Brahman, and the incidental quality of the Jiva is the Jivatva. So, very much like this, the analogy is, as we have seen before also, that the entire ocean and a single wave have two different forms. One is the huge ocean, it has a form. The Atlantic Ocean has a certain form, the Pacific Ocean has a certain form, and a simple wave also has a particular form. So, Ishvara is like the whole ocean, but Ishvara is really just the water of the ocean, which is Brahman, because the water is the reality, the shape of the ocean is incidental, right? So similarly here also, the wave also, the intrinsic part of the wave is the water, same water as the water of the ocean. But the incidental part of that is the smallness of the jiva, which is of the smallness of the wave, which is jiva. So therefore, hopefully, you can see that the Atma is the content of Ishvara, Brahman, and that is how you describe the Atma. Okay, hopefully that is somewhat clear to you. Please keep on attending all this, and it will become gradually clearer to you. Balamuniji, Maniji. Yes, thus spoke Zarathustra. Is it the same as that song? In that song, also sprach. Is that what it means? Also sprach. Thus spoke Zarathustra. Yeah, it looks like it. That's the first time I'm seeing that. Thank you, Zarina. Very good to see you all. So wonderful. And hope to see you next week. Om.